Hello students, welcome to Young Cubs. Today we are going to start with the chapter of decline of the Mughal Empire. Now where did we started suddenly with the Mughal Empire? We were all in the previous chapters, we were all talking about age of revolution where we saw the American Revolution and the French Revolution, and all of a sudden cut to decline of Mughal Empire. So for that matter, let us now first take a recap. Okay, so when things were happening outside, what things were happening outside India? Okay, what was happening outside India? So in the late 18th century, basically, there were two revolutionary movements that took place. One somewhere between 1775 to 1783, and the other one from 1789 to 1799. From 1775 to 1783 took place the American Revolution. Yes, and from 1789 to 99 was the French Revolution. Yes, so what happened in the American Revolution? The American Revolution happened or took place because of the autocracy of another country, British trying to conquer and rule over America. Yeah, so it happened because of the autocracy of another country. And which was the another country? The mother country called Britain. Yes. Whereas when we talk about French Revolution, over here the autocracy was within the country itself. The autocracy happened because of their internal ruler, the internal king, whose name was King Louis XVI. So the autocracy was from a within ruler. Yes, okay, within ruler. And yeah, so over here in America, okay, the British king, who was he? George, King George. Okay, let me write it this way. It was the British king, okay, British, and his name was King George, who was trying to rule America from Britain. Okay, and here it was the French ruler or the French king by the name King Louis XVI, and his wife. What was his wife's name? Marie Antoinette. Yes, the two of them were very, very pleasure loving and tried to drain the treasure, and they used to lay heavy taxes on the third class people. The remember the ancient regime, yeah. So they started doing that. So in 1789, okay, George 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 Washington led their army, being their commander in chief. Okay, and later he was elected as the President of America, not once but twice. And the third time also he was unanimously elected, but he refused to be the president for the third time. and we got our the Americans got their freedom, or they celebrate their Independence Day on the 4th of July, yeah, 1776. 17th century case, 1700 के किस्से. Okay, and here, over here, these French people celebrate, a national. They celebrate 14th July, they have a national holiday on 14th July, because of the Bastille incident and everything. So 14th July 1789, they finally declared themselves as independent, and hence they have a national holiday on this day. All right, children, hope this much is clear. So, all whatever happened in the 17th century, the later 17th century, both of them. First, it was the American Revolution, and then 6 years later, the French Revolution started. Yeah, but what was happening to India at this time? Yes, so at this time, it was a transition period for India. So around 1757. Okay, around this time, India was really, really angry, and India was at its peak of anger with. It was like a wrath for the British rulers in India. From 1757 to 1857, they bore a lot. It was terrible. The British autocracy, the British rule was terrible. They were actually going through misery and slavery for these years. And then in 1857, what happened? The revolt. In 1857, the revolt of 1857 took place. Okay, and this revolt basically is also known as the uprising of 1857. This was the first war which the Indians lost, simply because of the fact that they did not have a national movement. All of them didn't stand united, and that's the reason why, and that's how the British took advantage of this whole situation, and the Indians lost the first war against the British. Remember this date, 1857, the first war against the British took place. All right, children. Hope you've understood, or you've got the background why, when suddenly discussing world issues of America and France, we landed up to India. Okay, what was simultaneously happening in India while the other countries were going through their own struggles. Okay, then, as I told you, this was a period of transition in India. What transition was taking place? A transition from medieval to modern period. Transition was taking place. The medieval period was getting over, and modern period was setting in. Okay, and during the transition, or when the transition began, it began with the decline of the Mughal Empire. Yes, in the first half, and this happened in the first half of 18th century. If you check this, all this happened. Okay, all of this happened in the later 17th century. Okay, quite some time India was bearing everything, and 1857 revolt took place, and that you can say that it took place in the first half of the 18th century. So, children, do you have a gist or an idea of how the British started ruling India? It just did not happen one fine day. So, it so happened that India was a very profitable country in terms of trade. There was a lot of production of cotton and spices and indigo and all sorts of things were being produced in India. Okay, so now France and Britain basically came to India for trade, because in other places, in other countries, other than the Dutch and the other French and many other and other countries had a monopoly over other countries. So the only country which was not so strong and easy to enter for trade and business was India. So both the British and the French came to India and established the East India Company. Both of them established the East India Company, and where did they do this? They did this in Bengal. Children, not West Bengal, in Bengal. Earlier, it was not West Bengal, because the part which is Bangladesh today was combined, or there was no border between Bangladesh and the current West Bengal. There was just one country, which was Bengal. Later on, for trade purposes and believing in the divide and rule policy, the British broke the state into West Bengal and East Bengal. Later on, East Bengal became Bangladesh, and West Bengal remains in India yet. Okay, so the East India Company was established in Bengal by both British and the French. But then British was more powerful than the French. They fought, and French lost, Britain won, and then they comfortably established the East India Company only for trade purposes. But you know what? The British were quite sly. Eventually, they started making a lot of policies which were only and only for their benefit, directly coming in contact with the Mughals and all the kings out there. And that's how then they established a comfortable trade relationship, which was more profitable to the British and less profitable to India. And then, understanding the loopholes of India, they eventually got into the strategy of taking over the entire country and thinking of ruling the country. Okay, so that's how British entered India through trade, and then as they entered India as traders, entered as traders and became rulers of the country. Okay, then this is how the modern period in India is generally regarded as having begun in the mid 18th century. Yes, modern period, remember children, remember it, the struggle and everything around mid 18th century, post the 1850s, all this started. Okay, now let's have at that time, like in the previous slide, we just mentioned the transition began with the decline of the Mughal Empire. So let's understand the Mughal Empire now. So basically, the Mughal period is divided into early Mughals and later Mughals. Okay, it was the early Mughal period and the later Mughal period. All right, in the first Mughal was Babur, then his son Humayun, then came Akbar. Akbar the Great, he really deserves the title of the Great. Okay, then after Akbar, his son Jahangir, the whole throne went to Shah Jahan, and then at last it went to Aurangzeb. And Aurangzeb was the last powerful ruler. See, it started with Babur. After Babur, Humayun got a little stronger. After Humayun, Akbar was the strongest. He was at the peak. Then it again fell down with Jahangir, further fell down with Shah Jahan, and then Aurangzeb again tried to re-establish the aura of the Mughals. But then after Aurangzeb, their successors were quite weak. Yeah, so apparently after Aurangzeb came his son Bahadur Shah I. Okay, Bahadur Shah I. He was a successor of Aurangzeb. He was quite tolerant. It was quite okay. Okay, he was quite calm and friendly. Okay, after Bahadur Shah came Jahandar Shah. He was also friendly with Jats, Rajputs, and Marathas. He abolished these jizya. He checked Jagirs. He was okay. However, they were more pleasure-loving children. So, which and easily trusted people. So they came up to be much weaker than Aurangzeb. Okay, Aurangzeb apparently was the strongest, but a very hated emperor. Yeah, out of all of them, Akbar was the much loved one. Okay, he cared for his subjects, he protected his territory and empire thoroughly. But here, Aurangzeb did not even bother whether his subjects were happy or whether he got their support or no. All right, and then came Farooq Siyar. Okay, and after Farooq Siyar came Muhammad Shah. Okay, after him came Alamgir II, then Shah Alam II, and last of all came Bahadur Shah Zafar. What an irony! It started with Bahadur Shah, it ended with Bahadur Shah. Now, the only difference is the first one was Bahadur Shah I, and the last one was Bahadur Shah Zafar. All right, and after Bahadur Shah Zafar, he was proclaimed as the leader of the first war, which is the revolt of 1957. Okay, and after that, the Mughal Empire crashed completely and went into the hands of the British. Yeah. Okay. Now what happened? If you check the chart here, the Mughal reign started in 15th century, okay, and up to the 17th century, we had really powerful Mughal emperors. After that, somewhere around from the 17th century onwards, we had very weak successors. Yeah, up to 1857. Right? The deterioration or the decay and disintegration of the Mughal emperors actually started from 1707. Yes. Okay, so that's how during the first half of the 18th century, eventually, who was ruling during the first half of 18th century? Somewhere it started with Shah Alam II and it went on to Bahadur Shah Zafar. So from the 18th first half of the 18th century, the Mughal Empire decayed and disintegrated. Now the Mughal, why did it happen? The Mughal emperors had lost their power and glory, and thus, so it was, they were not able to sustain such a big empire. So not able to sustain such a big empire. And what happened? They kept losing their territories, and they lost a lot of wars. And with the loss of wars, they lost their power, they lost their glory, and what happened? Finally, the whole empire shrank. It finally shrank to um just a few squares, square miles, square miles around Delhi. So this is what happens when you are incapable of doing something. Okay, you're pleasure loving. What happens? You lose your glory, you lose your power, you lose your dignity, and you lose whatever you have in hand. Okay, and that's how what happened with the Mughal emperor empire as well. It finally was just a square miles around Delhi. Okay, now the unity and stability of the Mughal Empire had already been shaken. This had already been shaken during the reign of Aurangzeb. How long did Aurangzeb rule? He ruled for almost 50 years. Okay, and during this time, he was a very oppressive, ruler. He was so rigid, he wouldn't understand his subject problems, and that's how people refused to cooperate. His army was unhappy and did not dedicatedly do their bit because he was not a good ruler. Yeah, and that's how the death of Aurangzeb, who was the last great Mughal. Okay, he was the last great Mughal. Okay, what happened after that? What happened was the War of Succession. What does this mean? That his heirs, his sons, started fighting amongst themselves for the throne. Yes, they started fighting amongst themselves for the throne. Okay, and amongst the three children, amongst not three, I'm not sure how many children, but amongst all his kids, finally, who ascended the throne after Aurangzeb? We saw that it's Bahadur Shah one. Children, remember Bahadur Shah one. Okay, and he ascended the throne in 1707. In 1707, and at that age he was 65 years old. Yes, and he became the first in a line of emperors referred to as later Mughals. First among the later Mughals. Yes, children, look at India's map here. What do you see? See, it says this, okay? Extent of Mughal Empire has been colored in this ochre color. Okay, so it was somewhere in Kabul, which is now Afghanistan. Okay, yeah, Kabul is still in Afghanistan. Okay, then we have this Pakistan, current day Pakistan. going majorly covering Kashmir and Jammu and Kashmir, extending completely towards the east, covering the whole of Bengal. Yeah, covering southeast out here. Okay, complete west. See how big an empire was the Mughal Empire. Yeah, so much, and it reduced to what? Just a few square miles around Delhi. Yes, how sad. Ancestors make it really big, and if the heirs are not that great, this is what happens to all the wealth that they have earned. Yes, okay. Then what were the reasons for the decline of Mughal Empire? So now there are 8 reasons. You'll see them in red. So this is the first reason, which says the politics in the Mughal court. So now basically, children, the Mughal court was divided, had 4 groups of nobles. And what were the 4 groups? One was the Iranis, and the Iranis hailed from Persia. Okay, then they had the Turanis. Now the Turanis came from Transoxania. Transoxiana. Transoxiana. Okay, then the third nobles group was the Afghans. Okay, and the Afghans came from the mountainous border regions across the river. So across, or should I write the whole thing? Came from mountainous border regions across 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 Indus, and then came who? The Hindustanis. Yes, so Hindustanis, Indian, Delhi. Okay, so this is from Delhi or north of India. Alright, so the Mughal Empire or the Mughal court, not the empire, the Mughal court was divided, had four, not divided, had 4 Mughal groups or 4 noble groups, sorry. One was the Iranis coming from Persia, Turanis from Transoxiana, um, Afghans from the mountainous border regions across on the other side of Indus, and finally the Hindustanis who lived in India itself. Now, the Mughal court was a house of sharply divided, people. These 4 groups were sharply divided, and there was a division right in the middle itself. So this resulted in a constant struggle for power amongst these groups. All of them wanted to become powerful. All of them wanted to have the best territories and jagirs and wealth earning areas. So that's how this gave rise to mutual jealousy and rivalry, and it caused a harm to the main empire and the Mughal administration. And this really hampered the prestige and authority of the Mughal emperor. So basically, these 4 groups kept fighting internally, kept being jealous of each other, and but they were sharply divided. And to become powerful, one would crush the other's powers, and eventually they didn't realize, even if one group gets crushed, ultimately Mughal Empire is getting weak on the other hand, on from one side. Okay, so politics in the Mughal court was one of the reasons for the decline of the Mughal Empire. Then came the Jagirdari crisis. Now, what happened in the Jagirdari crisis? First of all, these 4 groups were harming the actual Mughal Empire. Okay, and in addition to the competition for the political power and influence, there was a full scramble. Everything was in a mess, only to acquire the most profitable and best jagirs, okay, amongst the rival nobles. So all of these, started fighting, crushing, plotting again for the most powerful jagirs. Okay, and the Mughal officers were given. So basically, the jagirs, whatever they earned as taxes or from the agriculture profit or merchants, okay, so all what was earned, the taxes basically was a payment to the Mughal officers got a payment in terms of whatever they earned from the Jagir. So they did not have a salary kind of a thing. The Mughal officers earned whatever as their salaries, as the profits made by the Jagirs. What is Jagirs? The territories. Okay, so Mughal officers, so all of them wanted the best ones. Yeah, and then what happened? The Mughal officers were given the Jagirs as their payment for their services, and towards the end of the 17th century, there were very few Jagirs left. Okay, now to satisfy the demands of the newly recruited officers. So every now and then, new people started doing good business and started, earning more and everything. So they wanted everything. And the newer people who were recruited or whatever, they started struggling for their salaries, for their profits and everything. And so, to satisfy the demands of the newly recruited officers, crown lands were converted to Jagir lands. Yes, and what happened? Revenue loss and further decline in emperor's powers. Yes, what does crown land mean? The kings owned, the emperors owned lands. Yes, they started shelling out those as Jagir lands. Okay, and revenue was lost. And further, once the wealth of the treasure reduces, the king's power also reduces. So, wealth is power, right? Okay, then, so these were the two reasons. One reason was politics in the Mughal court. The second reason was the Jagirdari crisis. Okay, then came the third reason was weak military organization and administration. So if the military is weak, do you think they can go on expeditions? They can go on conquest, conquest tours or whatever? No, right? So weak military organization. All right. So what happened out here? What happened out here? So to maintain absolute power and control of the military army, what did Akbar what had Akbar done? He had done the Mansabdari system. What is the Mansabdari system? What is the Mansabdari system? Every officer had a fixed quota or a fixed number of soldiers under them who would look after their training, who would look after their well-being and their and whatever warfare techniques and the requirements. So Mansabdari system was fixed fixed number of troops. Okay, so it was like 100 people under one senior officer. So seven senior officers with one under another senior officer, and then another three or seven or whatever under one chief. Things like that. So there was a fixed number. So every troop somehow or the other could walk up to this senior, and that's how the well-being and the training and the weaker ones could be taken care of. Okay, now this system, which worked very well under Akbar. Now it began to break down towards the end of the 17th century. Under these systems, where Mansabdars had to maintain a fixed number of troops, now the whole idea got haywire. They were giving Jagirs as payments for doing so. So now later, now the Akbar reorganization failed under these later Mughals. Now then, what happened? There was an increase in the number of mansabs, and when there was an increase in the number of mansabs, okay, handling of the troops became difficult, and moreover, there was shortage of jagirs as well. Yes, okay, and since there was shortage of jagirs, what happened? It led to corruption. The officers started getting corrupt, and because of corruption, okay, the incapable ones were also recruited. Nobody was bothered about the country as a whole, about the administration as a whole. So there was inefficiency which poured in, because self motive had to be sufficed, or satisfied, correct? So all this happened, and then they got corrupt methods were used, and when the military is weak, when the military strength is weak, no no king can then sustain their army, cannot then moreover the jagirs, the farmers, the everything wealth wise also everything started falling apart. That's how this also led to the decline of the Mughal Empire. So let's recap. The first reason why the Mughal Empire declined was the politics in the Mughal court. Okay. Then came the Jagirdari crisis, because of which Mughals declined. Then came the weak military organization and administration, and thus the Mughal army failed to keep up with and then after that, after all this shortage and corruption and everything, then the Mughal army failed to keep up with the times, with the pace, with the requirement of the current situations. Okay, now the Mughal rulers did not have a navy, so they did not have a navy, so troops attacking through the sea. They did not have any defense system over the seas, right? So and then they did not even make efforts to have one. They didn't even think about it. And then their equipments and techniques of warfare were obsolete, were older techniques. Okay, equipments, techniques were obsolete and inefficient. Correct? Rather inefficient. I would say they had become ineffective. Became ineffective. They became old, and people knew that. So all the more during the wars and everything, they couldn't sustain the armies. Okay, nothing was done to reform them, modernize them, or strengthen the army. So this is it. So that it's the emperor's duty to take care of and be abreast with the latest things happening in his kingdom or in the world to save them. Correct? So, after a weak military organization and administration, another reason was wars of succession. Who will become the another king? who will fight and become the next successor after the father died or became old. If the people are going to have a dispute internally, how will they look after their subjects? How will they concentrate on the army? How will they fight foreign attacks? So the war of succession was also a great reason. So the Mughal rulers' death often led to war of succession and rival claimants to the throne. Rival claimants means others also found, sorry, this throne is empty. We can go and try. So others also, foreign people, outsiders outside the Mughal Empire, also people wanted to acquire the throne. The internal people also wanted to acquire the throne. So obviously, no focus on the administration, no focus on the on sustaining or building a strong empire. Yeah. So so this is what happened. So wars of succession, rival claimants to the throne, and then these wars and everything were costly, caused a lot of destruction, and thus to repair, mend, and suffice for the war requirements, it drained the empire's resources, causing political upheavals and making the empire unstable and weak. Right? Now, at that time, let's take a little knowledge of India. It says the collapse of the Mughal Empire was partially hastened by a series of devastating famines. So there was no rain, there was no crops and harvest in the 17th century. That also led to the collapse of Mughal Empire. Okay, and this happened around this end of 17th century and early 18th centuries. These famines severely crippled the agrarian economy. They ruled from Agra, right? So the economy in Agra was partially collapsed even because of these famines. Okay, and leading to widespread starvation and weakening the empire's ability to maintain its military and administrative structure. Right? Another reason was Aurangzeb's policy. He was just not concerned about his subjects. He did not even take a check of the fact that quite a few of his subjects were of a different religion other than Islam. So he, as a king, as an emperor, was not very successful. Yeah. So he basically failed to realize that the progress and stability of such a vast empire dependent on policies of religious tolerance. He should have, considered the fact that Hindus have to go to their pilgrim, and if Muslims are not taxed to go on pilgrimage, why was he taxing the Hindus? And Hindu population was quite a bit. So he did not show religious tolerance, did not due to which he did not get the support and unity of the people. When he had divided the rule for Hindus, he had separate rules. For Muslims, he had separate rules. That again did not give him the support of people of different religions. Yeah, and this was the major reason which shook his foundation of the empire. And what did it result to? Yes, it resulted to a costly and a long drawn and ruinous Deccan campaigns. He wanted to become the emperor of complete India. So he was ruling the north, but he took expeditions in the south, in the Dakshin, which very in English is called Deccan. So he led campaigns out there, but without the support of quite a major chunk of Hindus, which led to very costly, very strenuous, or exertion. And then obviously when you don't have an adequate army, it will ruin you. How much will people fight for you? How much will a handful of people fight for you, where you could have got a support of a good number of people? So apparently, because of religious intolerance, his Deccan campaigns were totally ruinous. Okay, and then he was a king. Okay, he fought a number of wars, and he fought wars with Sikhs. He fought wars with the Marathas. He fought wars with the Jats, the Sikhs, and the Jats basically were a part of his northern territory. Okay, he fought amongst them as well, and the Rajputs. Now, Rajputs, Akbar had identified that they were a major support. And that's the reason why, if you remember, he had got into marriage alliance, friendliest alliance, and they say he had, remember, even told them that, you have to accept me as the overlord, and you can rule your own kingdom with the same glory and prestige. So Akbar realized it, but Aurangzeb did not realize. He did not learn anything from his ancestors. And again, wars will always cause deterioration of self as well. Okay, and then that's the reason why the loss of the support of the loyal Rajputs was a major blow. So loss of support of Rajput kings or Rajput territories was a major loss or a major downfall. And he not only lost the support, he made foes with them. He became their enemy, developed enmity with them. So now they were in, see, okay, you don't get the support, that is fine, but you build up the number of enemies against you. People are already against you. Your nobles are against you. Your subjects are against you. Hindu Muslim problem, and then all the more other people whose support could be gained by friendly alliances or whatever. And the Rajputs were a major sect of people. He didn't get their support, all the more he developed enemies, so they turned against him. So all these reasons were a major downfall of the Mughal Empire. Then came the economic bankruptcy. Our great Shah Jahan. Okay, I get it. The fact that he wanted to make his country, his empire, very, very beautiful. We understand that. But when he built the Taj Mahal, it was such a big blow on the royal treasury. So bankruptcy, one, due to monuments, and other bankruptcy cause of bankruptcy was the Deccan campaigns. Without the support and without the support of all his the complete army, right? So monuments, basically, the drain is was because of Shah Jahan, and majorly because of the 20-year long construction and architecture of the Taj Mahal. It cost him crores of rupees to build this, and at that time, crore was a lot of money. Yeah, so economic bankruptcy because of building of monuments and because of the Deccan campaigns. Okay, and unsuccessful ones. It was a financial disaster, and it ruined the empire and made and after this, obviously, if a king does not have money to sustain his kingdom, its collapse is inevitable. Inevitable means unavoidable. It has to fall, right? And then internal problem deliberately, increasing the number of enemies and all that. What happened? Okay, beyond that, See, people observe, and when they realize that the king has a lot of enemies, and the king is weak, from anywhere and everywhere, people come to loot and plunder and exploit that particular area. So the same thing happened. The major foreign invasions were basically the invasion of Nadir Shah, okay, and the other one was of Ahmad Shah Abdali. Yeah, so what happened when Nadir Shah invaded? The first thing he did was he plundered and looted Delhi. Okay, the main head office, the main area, main head, so from where the king actually ruled and sat and made plans, and the administration was right from there. Now he plundered Delhi, and what all did he plunder? He took away a lot of valuable treasures, and amongst the valuable treasures was the Kohinoor diamond, extremely expensive, and the other thing was the peacock throne, which was RONE, which was embedded with very precious gems. Yeah, and Ahmad Shah Abdali also did the same thing. Basically, he plundered. How many times did he plunder? UNDERE, plundered the north of India, the Kabul and all that area above Delhi. How many times has he done it? Thus making in essence of the power and the empire will sustain only if there is adequate wealth. The first hit was on the wealth of the country. So let's take a recap. What were the reasons? Okay, one reason was the politics in the Mughal court. The second reason was the Jagirdari crisis. The third reason was weak military organization and administration. The fourth reason was the war of succession. Okay, after a king died, after an emperor died. Then fifth reason was Aurangzeb's non-tolerance policy of religion. Okay, then the bankruptcy, economic bankruptcy due to monument building and evitable attacks or evitable campaigns where we know that the Mughal Empire could have saved and going to lose these battles. Then came the foreign invasions too from Nadir Shah and Ahmad Shah Abdali, and then came the weak successors. Now, the weak successors, well, they had lots. Okay, and that's the reason why they became pleasure loving. No self improvement, just enjoying life, and which is why they were weak and inefficient. Yeah. So, and then moreover, they were the puppets in the hands of powerful, ambitious nobles. So, they were inefficient and became puppets to the ambitious nobles. Okay, whatever the nobles would say, they would blindly trust them, and that's how they kept losing power. And these nobles basically controlled the total administration, correct? So they had no clue how much money is being there. They've been robbing the royal treasury or tricking the kings or the emperors, right? And the provincial governors also took advantage. The provincial governors also came up to the level where the kings were busy enjoying their lives. So everybody took advantage, including the provincial governors, and the government eventually became weak and collapsed. Okay, they basically, these provincial governors, what did they want? They wanted independence. independent kingdoms. They wanted to be, they knew in and out of their Jagirs, so now they wanted to become independent kings, chota chota kings of every area. Okay, and that's how the Mughal Empire kind of split, broke up, and then eventually, under one rule, under one king, the whole thing broke up, it shattered, and went to small, small, tiny, tiny kingdoms. Okay, and all the hopes ended with Bahadur Shah Zafar and British. Okay, challenged the Mughal authorities. Okay, they completely took control over Bahadur Shah Zafar, who was the last king. The first king, Bahadur Shah I, the last king, Bahadur Shah Zafar. And they began to pursue their plan of establishing total control over India. Okay, Bahadur Shah Zafar, as I told you, was the last of the Mughal queen. Assumed when when he looked a little hero like was when he took he was proclaimed as the leader during the revolt of 1857. Yeah, which was led against the British. But remember, it was the first war, and it was not a collaborated one. It was not a one country war against the British. So they lost. And then what happened under the leadership of Bahadur Shah Zafar? India lost, could not get its freedom. British won, and what happened? Bahadur Shah Zafar was exiled exiled, punished or rather jailed and sent to Rangoon. To Rangoon, okay, and over there he was quite old. He was in his 70s or so, and he died there during his exile. Okay, and the Mughal Empire came to an end. Right? So the Mughal Empire actually lasted for 3 centuries. And 3 centuries means 300 years. Yeah, quite a long reign. Yes, and its decline in the first half of 18th century led to intense rivalry. Okay, the rivalry within the nobles, the rivalry with the Jats, the Sikhs, everything, the rivalry with the foreign people. So all in all, it gave to a lot of rivalry and intense ones. Okay, and the various ambitious powers to fulfill the political vacuum started pouring in. Everybody wanted little or big chunks of the kingdom, and the kingdom split. Okay, the struggle ended in the victory of British. And then the British ruled India for another 200 years. And it was slavery, it was bad. And then, okay, this marked, okay, the end of or the decline of Mughal, or the complete perishing of the Mughal period, marked the beginning of the modern period. Right? So, decline of Mughal period, or rather not decline, the end of Mughal period. End of Mughal period marked the beginning of the modern world. Modern period. What modern world? Modern period in Indian history. Yes. So with this in the next chapter we shall study more about what happened after this, and how and about the British rule and everything. All right, children, did you know that the Kohinoor diamond is one of the largest and the most valuable diamonds in the world? The actual meaning of the word Kohinoor is mountain of light. Yes, so Kohinoor means mountain of light. Yeah, okay, and it was very important for India. And during Shah Jahan's reign, it was mounted on the peacock throne. Okay, and the Mughal throne of India, which was the Mughal throne of India, and later it was taken away by Nadir Shah to Persia, which was around in 1739, and it was brought back to Punjab. So it did come back to India in 1813 when the deposed ruler of Afghanistan, okay, Shuja Durrani, gave away the diamond to Ranjit Singh, the founder of Sikh Empire. So he very royally, very respectfully gave it back to the Sikh empire, the emperor known as Ranjit Singh, and in return, Ranjit Singh helped him back to gain back the Afghan throne. Yeah, so the British acquired the Kohinoor diamond after they conquered it in Punjab in 1849. So British again seized it, grabbed it, took it away with them. So this was all about the decline and the reasons of decline of the Mughal Empire. Thank you so much, children, and God bless you all.